Welcome to Gatecrashers, a podcast dedicated to kicking open the doors to your next favorite thing. Our mission, our creed, and our code is this: to make all things nerdy more approachable and accessible for everyone. We want you to find a universe that you'll fall in love with. Today I am joined by Eisner Award-winning writer of Batman, Mr. Miracle, The Vision, the Sheriff of Babylon, Omega Men, and the new DC Black Label series, The Human Target, Tom King. How are you?
It's a great pleasure to be here. You have an amazing credo. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, listen, I said a while ago we were named Super Sons. My brother and I were talking about Mr. Miracle, and I said, if we ever get Tom on the show, we're just going to say we're the King's Men. So now it's canon.
Yeah, that's in blood now. You can't take it back.
So
you're the Kingsman.
We're known as pretty hard-hitting journalists in this comic books world, so we always like to start off with something tough.
All right, I'm ready. I'm prepped for this. I was in the CIA once. I got anti-interrogation techniques.
You know this.
I'm ready.
What's your favorite sandwich?
God damn, that is tough. It's not tough because it just occurred to me that I do have it. Because you're like, do I have a favorite sandwich? Because I love a good sandwich. My favorite sandwich, and it's in Mr. Miracle, it's like what he would do on the last day he lives, is the number 19 from Cantor's. No, it's not Cantor's. Oh my God, my brain is farting. It's pastrami and coleslaw and mustard on rye. And that it betrays my half Jewish roots, but yeah, that's my favorite sandwich. What is the? Someone's going to.
It's not a Reuben, but it's a it's coleslaw.
Coleslaw, yeah, so coleslaw. No, not a Reuben.
Yeah.
It's not corned beef. It's pastrami.
So I know in North Jersey they call it a sloppy Joe, but I don't know if it's called that from where you order it. I worked at a deli for a while, so that's what it was called, but.
No, in LA, a sloppy Joe is like, or at least the sort of white trashish LA I'm from. It's a sloppy Joe is that thing you buy at the grocery store that your mother prepares in 30 seconds.
That's why I was so confused when I heard it was called something else. I was like, that's not what I was expecting. So you've got a new big book coming out, and
I do. I have a few big books coming out. I got.
Trust me,
it's going to be a whole big.
I've been watching your teases on the Twitter.
Yeah, I have my creator own is launching very soon, and then this is launching very soon.
Listen, I'm so pumped.
Or I guess it's being announced very soon.
So pumped for your creator owned. But
me too.
The book we're here for today is The Human Target. So Christopher Chance,
which I love. So
listen, this is my first exploration of the character. So I'm very excited. It is very new user reader friendly. So if you've never read Human Target, you can read this. So.
Sure. It's weird how little people know about the Human Target.
Yeah,
he's had two TV shows. Like he's had one more TV show than Aquaman. You know, like but still he's pretty unknown.
Yeah, he I remember it was a Fox show. I just never went and picked up the comics after that.
Sure.
So Christopher Chance is a character who assumes other people's identities in order to protect them. While many of the stories have explored that, this Human Target story is taking a chance to explore who he is. When you're writing this character, do you think the years of living in other people's metaphorical skin has had an effect on him?
Yes, but when I first got this character, I think every writer's, I don't know if ambition or creativity, but when you get a character that constantly pretends to be other people, the first thing you want to talk about is, maybe he loses his identity. Maybe he can't understand who he is, and he's pretending to be so many people that he can't, he doesn't even know who he's going after and who's he not. So you start to pitch stuff like, he's going after a target, but the target's actually himself, and he doesn't remember, and he's actually chasing himself, and all these kind of pitches come to you, and that's definitely where my brain went in the first direction. And then I remember that Peter Milligan, the famous writer of Vertigo, had done like 100-issue run on Human Target, where that's all that was the basis of his thing. It was all about identity. It was all about losing yourself. And so I immediately knew that that direction had been explored and explored well about this character. So although I do believe that has affected him, that's not a central piece to this, because we went in a different direction, because we wanted to sort of do something different than what Milligan had done. Because I thought, sometimes when someone's done something so well, you don't want to retread that surface, because then you're just playing a cover song of good music.
So do you think because he's had all of those stories and that kind of background, do you think he has a strong sense of self already in the beginning of yours?
Yes, I think in mine he has a strong sense of self, but there's a vulnerability to him. There's sort of an ennui about him. There's a idea that he's spent his life with this bizarre mission. Christopher Chance was raised as kind of, like an undercover operative and an assassin. He has a very Batman origin story. His original story is he was there when his father was sort of caught with, his father went into debt, and rather than unpaying his debt, someone came and killed his father in front of him, and his father sort of begged to die. And the idea that he would die for other people because he saw that, it's very interesting, right? So yes, I think he does have a sense of self, but I don't think he loves who he is. I don't think he thinks he's someone incredible or great. I think there's an idea that, like, I've lived a lonely life and I'm going to die a lonely death.
Well, with him facing his own mortality,
but in a happy way.
Yeah, it's got bright colors. It's fine. Do you think? What was important to you thematically about someone grappling with their own end?
I mean, it's funny when you do the thing you discover as a writer is you're supposed to be pretending, and you're supposed to be pretending to be other people, and you're constantly doing that. It's one day I'm Supergirl, one day I'm Human Target, one day I'm Batman, one day I'm Adam Strange. And I honestly think if this happens if you're doing it right. The farther you run from yourself, the more you end up writing about yourself, because you're trying to get at things that are inside you that you're trying to communicate to other people through your stories. So when I started out with Human Target, I was trying to write something that's sort of more bright and I do think it's more fun. It's very it's genre. It's very noir. But in the end, I wrote it at the height of the pandemic, and it's about a guy living knowing he's going to die, and what that means to someone, and how that raises the stakes in life, and how you, when you're faced every day with your own mortality, what do you do with that? Do you distract yourself? Do you go to your family? Do you find love? Do you find hate? Like, what do you do? And I think that all comes from just being in the center of the pandemic, where literally, at the height of it, it's a little better now. We're not quite out of it, but at the height of it, there were just moments where none of us knew if the next day we'd catch the bug and it sort of be our turn to go down that hole. So it's very much about that. It's about looking at your own mortality and deciding how you would spend your days if death wasn't 40 years away, but death was right on your shoulder, which it was for all of us.
And how do you balance that kind of loneliness that comes with all of those feelings with trying to find something that makes the rest of your life worth living, like love or friendship or things like that?
I mean, I think that's what this whole comic is about. That's what these 12 issues are about. It's about a lonely man at the end of his life, searching for meaning. And of course, he's trying to solve a mystery, right? He's trying to solve a mystery with his own death in his face. I'm talking around things because if you describe the pitch of the book, you've described the first issue. It's one of those kind of books, which often happens to me. If I describe the first issue of Mr. Miracle, a guy kills himself in order to, and he wakes up from it. I've already, as soon as I said the premise, you've already read the first issue of Mr. Miracle. Similar with this book. So, but in finding his own death, what he does, he chooses to solve this mystery that involves the Justice League of Europe, and it becomes sort of his white whale. He's Ahab, and he's looking for something. And is that obsession good or not? In the face of death, being obsessed with sort of solving one thing, is that what you should be doing? Who cares about a mystery when the existential dilemma of your end is in your face? So yeah, it's all that stuff.
some big things to grapple with. Now,
but it's genuinely one of the most fun comics I've ever written.
Yeah.
It's like a noir mystery. It's got humor in it. It's got a guy who just doesn't give. Can I swear?
Yeah, you can say what the fuck you want here. Yeah.
Oh fuck it. Good.
Yeah.
I swear a lot. I'm from LA. I say dude and fuck too much.
Yeah.
If it's about a guy who genuinely like doesn't give a fuck. Like he's that knight in shining armor who's now living in a motel. In a strip mall in LA, and so it's super fun, and and it's got romance, and it gets sexy, and it gets violent, and it gets silly, and because we're talking about the JLI, so it's just a huge canvas, but it has underneath it are these sort of existential themes.
So you have described this book as a romantic book, which is a theme we often see explored in your work.
Yes, and will continue to see explored in my work.
So with creating fictional relationships, how do you approach giving them sort of like complications and weight to give them a sense of gravity that can impact the story?
I mean, I always just try to make them true to my own experience. I mean, they're usually, I mean, I've been with my wife now we just passed 20 years. And I always try to draw on sort of, I just happen to be one of those people who's lucky enough to be madly in love with his wife. So I always try to draw on that feeling. And I think that immediately creates stakes to me. I mean, I've been, I don't say this in a brag way, but, you know, I've been, you know, like I've been shot at, I've been on sort of the edge of things. I've, you know, been nominated for major awards or whatever. I've been in some stressful situations. And there's nothing more stressful. There's no higher stakes than sort of when you love someone and you wonder if they love you.
Damn. Wow. Wow. That's like a quote right there. Damn. That's.
But it's true, right? Like that's, I mean, those are from the time you get your first crush when you're 13, 14 to the time you're having your 20th anniversary and you look across at a perfect person, at someone you just like. Love is the biggest stakes in our lives constantly. And that's when you die in your deathbed, you know, hopefully your last thought is of someone you love, whether it be a child or a companion.
Yeah, that fear that like you love someone more than they love you is actually the most terrifying thing. And now you put that thought into my head. So thanks. So
what's the point in writing fiction if you're not playing with the terrifying, right? That's what we do for a living.
I waited till the end of Strange Adventures to read the whole thing at once. We see an exploration of the weight and worth of the idea of truth. With both that story and this, featuring an investigation, how will Human Target approach finding the truth? Is it something you find there are shades of, or is there an absolute in your mind?
I mean, unlike I just did a book called Rorschach, which was very much about sort of the shades of things and what's real and what's not real. And Strange Adventures, there was an actual truth that was about people like this is much more of a straight up mystery that'll get solved by the end of it. Like there's a murder and there's a guy who's looking to solve it and it will get solved. Good. And that's sort of the plot engine that carries us through this environment that we've talked about. Yeah. So it's not. I've done a lot in my work, with Sheriff Babylon, Mr. Miracle, of sort of. The ambiguities around what's truth and what's fiction and playing with fiction. That's not what I'm playing with here. What I'm playing with here is a man and death, not those themes.
Yeah, because listen, the end of Mr. Miracle still has me pondering on a lot of things. Sure. So what does truth mean to?
Not to say you won't. So I've already written this. I wrote it a year ago almost. So I know what the end is. And not to say there won't be stuff to ponder at the end, but I don't want to say it's like it's all wrapped up. It'll hopefully leave you
not in an existential crisis.
It'll leave you. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know that feeling when you like. I don't know, what's a great movie? Like walking out of The Matrix or walking out of Memento. It's like, it's not as if every problem was solved, but it's as if a whole world was open that you just want to walk into. Like that's the feeling I'm going for.
Great. I'm so excited for this book. Now, what does truth mean to a man whose job is based around lying about who he is?
I don't know if you're talking about me or the Human Target, because for 10 years, well, not 10 years, for 8 years of my life, I lied who I was to everyone I knew, right? Only my wife and my mother knew what I did for a living. You know, my in-laws, my grandmother, my father, my brother. Wow. None of them knew, and I was constantly telling all these sorts of lies about who only I was and where I was. Only 2 people knew. Yeah. Wow. And listen,
it's been a little bit known that some of your work, you're trying to work through your stuff. So is it,
I think all of my work, I'm trying to work through my stuff.
That's what art is.
That's what art is. Like if you don't think, when you're watching Star Wars, you're looking into George Lucas's talking about what it's like to have an ideal childhood that he, that's exactly what you're looking. You're looking at George Lucas's soul,
and sometimes it just gets revised and it's fine.
Yeah. So that, that's the point of good art, is that you want to look into someone's soul, but also be entertained, but both things can be true. But but for Chance, what it's like to constantly lie. I mean, people in my understanding or how I'm painting the character is that he's sort of a guy, people know what he does for a living. He kind of has a shop, and he's very sort of, he's like an ancillary superhero. Like in my head, and this is probably a stupid way to think about the DC universe because I think of a cartoon instead of but in my head, Justice League Unlimited haunts my view of the DC universe. The idea that there's a satellite where they all have lunch breaks and then some people come and go. I feel like Human Target's a guy who's had an invitation to the satellite. He's seen the lunchroom. He knows where to get the apples, but he doesn't feel comfortable there. And he could only go there on someone else's, someone else's dime. Like he's in with the superheroes and people know what it is. They know who he is, but he's not part of them.
He's your buddy. Like you don't always invite to the parties, but like he'll come to the big events.
That's right. Yeah.
And
he's also, exactly.
I love the idea of the JLU, Justice League Unlimited kind of watchtower where people come and go because it's a full fleshed out world. And I like that's how you kind of think about it.
That's always going to be my DC. Like, I guess I've been playing DC for this ever long, but it's still how I imagine it to be.
I grew up with that show, so that's kind of how it's been ingrained.
So good, right?
They did Watchmen really, really well with like the other characters.
Yeah.
The question. So this book has a neo-noir sensibility with its poppy coloring and style from Greg Smallwood, the book's artist. Did you purposely use the JLI instead of a typical lineup of Justice League characters to kind of give a kind of more comedic angle with these oddballs rather than just doing Wonder Woman, Superman, and the rest?
I can't believe it took us this long to mention Smallwood. Because unlike I've done a lot of books at DC. I've sold a lot of books. I work with the best artists in comics: Clay Mann, Mitch Gerrits, Doc Shaner, I don't know, Lee Weeks, Bill Quist. But this is the first book where when I'm trying to sell this book, which I guess I kind of am now because I guys want you to read it. Like the first thing I want you to know is that it's beautiful. like the art is stunning. It's just it's nothing like you've seen in a comic before, but it's not like crazy like Dave McKean. It's nothing you've seen in a comic before. It's just a purification of beauty in comics before, like with just like a little sprinkle of animation. It wasn't like I didn't really take no offense to this project, no offense to Human Target. I didn't really take it that seriously until Greg drew me the cover. Like it was something on like an editor had offered it to me. I never had passion for this character, and then I saw what Greg drew. I was like, oh, okay, I have a tool here where I could do something that's as good as Mr. Miracle, and like the whole thing took off from there. But to get back to your question about the JLI, so no, the reason I chose them was the stupidest of all reasons, and it didn't work out. I have a 7-year-old son. I have 3 kids. My youngest is 7, and his favorite superhero from watching the Justice League Unlimited cartoon is Ice. That's his jam. He loves Ice. He's got an Ice figure. That's just for whatever reason that hero appeals to him. You know, when he's in it, we watch Justice League Unlimited together. He's always looking in the background. It's Ice there. It's Ice. That's just that's where he goes. And inevitably, I go to the dinner table every day with my family, and we talk about whatever I'm writing. And my 7-year-old will, at least once a week, be like, "Are you writing Ice? Are you writing Ice?" So when I was doing Human Target, I was sort of coming up with, I had this idea, there would be a murder, and there would be suspects, and the suspects would be involved in heroics. And I was like, I need to narrow this down because it can't be all heroes ever. And I was like, I'll do something with Ice, so my damn kid will stop bugging me at the table.
I have a note later in my Ice question about if you did it so your son would stop bullying you. So
100%. That's exactly what I did. My son would stop bullying, and then I wrote this, and then I wrote this comic, and as you'll see going on, this is. An adult comic. I mean, kids can enjoy it. I mean, there's nothing. It's probably like PG-13, but it's not for a 7-year-old. It's on that level of sort of like Frank Miller's Daredevil or a DKR. Not in quality, although I hope so, but in terms of its rating. So I put Ice in this book where she's an adult hero going through adult things. And I was like, I have Ice in this book, but you can't read it for another like 6 years.
You're telling me you're not letting your kids read the Frank Miller Daredevil already?
Lord knows I did when I was their age, and look how fucked up I am. So
okay. They'll just get the Catholicism. It's going to be really rough for a couple of years. That's a very interesting way to approach that. These characters. So
that's how I got into JLI. But I grew up on the JLI. They were, when I was first breaking into comics, they were the Justice League that I sort of came to, where I was like, what is this? Like, I watch Super Friends. None of these people are in Super Friends. And so I have a deep fondness for those characters and for Giffen and DeMatteis. That
isn't interesting. That was your league. Like, when I think of the Justice League, I think of Morrison's Justice League, because that's what I grew up with.
Morrison came just at like mid 90s. So I was just starting to enter college. God, I'm so old, man. So
I read them after they're all collected. So if you wanted me to put a nail in the coffin for you.
I remember I was an intern at Vertigo in 98 or 99. And I was photographing pages of Invisible, and I was like, what is this? I don't understand a thing that's going on in this book. And Invisible is like a masterpiece, but it's hard to understand when you're just like doing it. And I asked the actual editor of the book, I was like, what is this about? And she's like, I have no idea. But if we keep letting him do it, he'll write JLA.
So you've mentioned in the past that you often write scripts with what the artist wants to draw in mind. Given your approach to writing scripts, has this changed at all recently, or is this still how you do it? Because, as you said, you work with the best artists.
No, it hasn't changed. Although I'm working on a current project now where I feel like I'm working on a project for Jorge. I think I've said this before. Jorge Fornes, who I did Rorschach with, and I almost feel sorry just because there's a lot of characters. Like, if I was an artist, I'm not sure this was the assignment I would choose. It's a lot of characters. It's normally I just do one character, which I think is a little easier. And I haven't done a sort of a team kind of thing in a while. So with the exception of the current thing I'm writing, no, I always try to write to the artist's strengths. And I always sort of check with them. What do you want to do? What are you interested in working on? So what do you want to draw, basically? With some, because that gets you best art and gets them to come back and keep working with you.
Someone like Mitch, who it seems like you're personal friends with. Is it easier to work with someone like that rather than someone you have on an assignment, or do you become friends with them and try to understand their wants and like needs in their own art?
I mean, I've run the gauntlet. I'm closer now than I used to be to most, but I mean, like I did Omega Men, which I really enjoy, with Barnaby Bagenda. And if I was walking down the street and Barnaby Bagenda was walking right towards me, the Barnaby Bagenda t-shirt, I wouldn't recognize him. I've never met him. I've never talked to him on the phone. I've never even emailed him because he had an agent back then. So I would email his agent, and his agent would get the script and email me back.
Wow.
So
that's interesting.
And so yeah, I've done it that way. I've worked with a lot of Spanish artists who obviously I don't see very often. I've probably done more work with Mikel Janin than any other artist, and I've met Mikel twice in my life.
Wow.
I mean, we've emailed and we've texted, but we're he lives a world away.
That's interesting because I guess being from the other side, like reading these comics, I would never know that sometimes there's like not a complete back and forth in some projects.
Yeah, there's no comic I've worked on now. Omega Men was kind of an exception. I was what's it called? I was doing the layouts for that book, which is a different sort of thing. Sometimes, I mean, to be perfectly honest, yes, it's better to know your artist, to know their strengths and to sort of ask them what they want to draw and get inspired by them. Mitch and I just designed a new project together, and we sat down, we came up with it, and he see this, and that way I knew what he wanted. I knew we could tailor it, and he knew what I wanted, and it's much easier. But I mean, sometimes it's like I'll be writing a thing and I'll be like, oh crap, man, I just put so many panels and hard stuff to draw on this page. Mitch is going to give me crap about this, or Clay's going to hate this. I recently did an issue with Clay, and I was like, I'm writing this issue, and like, this is what's going on. He's like, well, can you do it in the snow so I don't have to draw all those stupid backgrounds? And I was like, done. We'll find a way to put it in the snow.
That's a good cop-out, really, the snow.
Yeah.
So now we are on to what I've been super excited for, is the Justice League International questions. Now,
awesome. I love Justice League International, and they're super fun in this book.
Tell me if I mispronounce this name, but with much of J.M. DeMatteis' work.
That's how I say it.
Okay, cool. I've never had to say it out loud. exploring the themes of the mundane, trauma, and the joys of being a wife guy, having some similarities with your own work. Do you find his work influencing how you approach these characters?
Yes, I mean, very much so. Yeah. And I would throw in that when he works with Giffen, because they co-wrote that together, even more so, Giffen's like a personal hero of mine, both in terms of sort of how he handles himself and his entire career, and his sensibility, which is kind of, gruff, kind of, he's like the modern day Wally Wood, he's like, what is that? He's amazing. And yeah, like how they do, Booster's a little is a little goofier. Guy Gardner's a little more assholic. Blue Beetle's a little too serious. Ice is nice. Fire is hot tempered. Like, all that stuff is taken directly from that run, which is just a beloved object, especially the first like 30 issues where Giffen's still doing some of the art with Maguire. They're so beautiful. And I just hung out with Kevin Maguire last weekend and got to tell him how much I loved his stuff. And awesome. I got a signed poster from him for my kid and stuff. So despite that book's reputation as like silly, the early arcs explored some rather dark and political themes. Like the gray and all that stuff. Yeah.
Now, it does have some silly parts like the one punch and things like that, but it did buck against the reputation that many fans have with that era. How much of your book plays into that kind of disconnect with like the heavier themes of those characters?
All of it. All of it is that stuff. It takes very much. It just like you said, it's such a keen observation that I think people read that and they're like, oh, this is a joke book. I'm going to be reading the Inferior Five. It's about a bunch of incompetence, but it's actually, they're going on real missions that have real stakes. And they just happen to be flawed human beings who are kind of trying to figure their way through this.
I will admit, I need to say this. I had a friend, Sean Dillon, who is a writer. He's written about you extensively. I ran these questions past him, and he helped me out with them. I just want to give him credit on that. So if people hear this, he is credited.
You rock, Sean. Thank you so much. These are great questions.
He wrote a book about Mr. Miracle. I'll have to send it to you.
Awesome.
So, I tried not to open... I gotta contain myself for this one. I tried not to open a question about ice with a pun. I've really been trying to cool it out with the ice puns recently. But she seems to be an integral part of the story.
Anything can be Batman and Robin.
Listen, people...
Schwarzenegger doing his whole thing.
People talk so much crap about that. I love that Mr. Freeze. One of my favorite characters of all time. Like, love the guy. But I really like when he makes jokes. He also, a really big wife guy. Just that his wife is an ice pop.
That's right.
So she's going to be a big part of this book. I know that your son loves the character because I got to read that wonderful interview from Entertainment Weekly. I want to say it was
awesome.
What about her as a character appeals to you other than not being bullied by your son?
I mean, a few things. She's been retconned in a weird way, which when I read her origin story, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Where first she had sort of a very nice and not happy, but kind of a pleasant origin story where he was, from kind of a village of, witches and wizards and, in Norway or Sweden. And she found her way out and she, joined the UN and met fire. And then like, in the 90s when everything got really sad, they gave her another origin story where
everything got sad. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, where all of that was a lie that she had made up to protect the truth, which was that she developed these powers like a metahuman, kind of like a mutant, and that her grandfather wanted to kill her, and that her father and her grandfather got in a fight and they were about to kill each other, and she released her powers and accidentally killed her whole family, and then ran away and invented the story about her being from this sort of pleasant village.
Ice cold.
Yeah, it's ice cold, right? And then you add to that the weirdness that she was killed unceremoniously in a forgotten Justice League event in the late 90s, which Mark Waid himself, I'm not talking out of school because he said this publicly, regrets doing. And then came back, Gale brought her sort of back, and it's like, so those things where she like has the pleasant, nice, happy side, but there's also this idea that, okay, that pleasantness was actually hide in pain and trauma. If I find pain and trauma, I'm like,
You're on
that's
there.
where I live, right?
Yeah.
And the idea that she was killed and brought back is also interesting. And the idea that she has this relationship with Guy Gardner, who's just like a jock asshole. He has the good parts to him.
He's up next.
But the fact that they are exes, it's a weird dynamic of sort of like he's, very much. We're nerds, we're always averse to jocks. I mean, that's what it means. And so he's like a jock of the DCU, and she's I don't know about growing up with you, but I very much remember having crushes on nice girls who fell for bad jocks, and kind of that weird dynamic,
Yeah.
Mine. And then add. I have so many thoughts on Ice. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm here to hear them.
And then add to that her very deep friendship and almost her life partner with Fire, and that relationship with this Brazilian supermodel who's the opposite of her in many ways. The only time I'd ever written Ice before was in like 2 panels in Heroes in Crisis where they both sort of say, if everything is shitty as long as I have fire, I'm okay, and if everything is shitty as long as I have ice, I'm okay. So all those factors made for her an interesting character to me.
I have to tell you that I reread Heroes in Crisis last night because I knew there was panels with characters I wanted to talk about. Have you, before I ask this question, have you written Guy Gardner other than that one panel?
No, I don't believe I have. I mean, he's in. I mean, obviously he's in Human Target, so he's been in my head lately. But I don't think I've written him.
Interesting.
No.
So
I've written one Green Lantern comic. It was the one I did with Doc Shaner. It was the most fun I ever had.
Okay, cool. So I was right. So I went in the panel. He says it should have been me from the beginning. What was wrong with me? I'm curious if you think he has a more vulnerable side to him that's worth exploring.
I mean, everyone has a more vulnerable side to them. Whether it's worth exploring or not is a good question. I remember, I can't quote it verbatim for what issue it is, because it's one of those memories of your childhood of a comic rather than a real comic. The first time I encountered Guy, I read some origin story of his. I couldn't tell you who it's by. And I think it was in Secret Origins would be my guess. And it was such a sad origin story because it was like the ring landed exactly equal in distance between him and Hal. But he had like brain damage at the time because he was hit by a football or something. And so he couldn't get the ring. It was completely out of his control. And so the ring went to Hal. And the idea of that haunting him and Hal is, Hal's not the jock you hate. Hal's the jock everyone loves, like to have that sort of like, it went to him and he's the golden boy and I'll always be kind of the little stepchild. It's kind of like Jason and Dick, like their relationship. It's like, I can't ever be perfect like that person in the eyes of my father, who to him is Oa and the little blue dudes.
Big expositional blueberries.
Yeah, big expositional blueberries, exactly. So yeah, I think there is depth to that character, and a lot of that depth comes out in sort of him looking at ice and stuff. But there's also a lot of toxicity to that character. There's a lot of arrogance, and there's a lot of stuff that we can play with as both a good guy and a bad guy.
Guy has always been this brutish kind of jockey character. When you're writing him, are you going to try to show that this may be a facade, or that's really who he is?
I mean, I think it's a brilliant question, because I think sometimes the facades become who you are more important than who you are underneath, especially if you're doing bad shit. Like, the idea that you fake it till you make it, which they tell every writer, which is utterly true. If you're faking being an asshole and you're an asshole to people and you say, oh no, deep down, I'm actually a good guy. No, maybe deep down you're a guy who failed because you're faking it. Like, right. Like, so I don't know if there's a distinction between a guy who acts like an asshole and is a warm fuzzy inside. I just don't know if I was like, I think there's depth to the character, but as long as you act that way, you can't sort of use the depth as an excuse for your actions. So does that make sense?
Yeah. Listen, I like Guy Gardner a lot, and I think it's a character who I'd like to see more of. So I'm excited to see what you do with him.
Me too. I like writing him. He's super fun. And I do think he has, I mean, there are qualities to him that are wonderful. Like if you're in a fight, you want Guy on your side. Like you want him in your corner. He's a freaking pit bull. Yeah. Like he's not going to give up. Yeah. I remember there's some famous part of the Yellow Lantern War where Hal's like, all right, the only person who can do this is Guy. Like of the four, like the one guy, it's like a boxing match. Like Guy has to win one boxing match.
I think he's just kind of a dumbass. Like, like in a good way. Like
too.
he's just, I want to see him kind of fleshed out more. So I'm very excited about that. But there's a character you have written multiple times. It's not Batman, and it's Booster Gold. Now,
My favorite character to write in
that's
comics.
what I was going to say. You love this guy, and we're huge fans of him as well. Now, do you approach writing his like antics and his specific brand of heroism as like ill thought out, or do you think it comes from a place of yearning to mean something to someone?
I should say very much that I write him wrong. Like if you want like the original, no, normally my like with Human Target, I went back to the Len Wein Giordano originals and sort of copied that. If you want like the original Human Target that Dan Jurgens did, and Dan's a friend of mine, that's not how I write him. I write the Human Target. I mean Booster Gold.
Okay.
The Booster Gold that Dan Jurgens created, which I think is a great guy. He's the hero who just wants to make a little profit on being a hero, which is a fun, interesting concept. But I write him a little bit with the characterization from the Justice League Action cartoon and the Justice League Unlimited cartoon, where he's a hero. He has great intentions, but he'll slip on a banana peel and fall on his face, and then be like, "I meant to do that." Like there's an essential humor to him. You'll see in the issue where he appears, I think I give Chance sort of a little speech where he sort of says why Booster is awesome. And it's very much sort of like my thing. Yeah. And I mean, I guess I'm giving this away, but I don't mind. I mean, but his general conclusion at the end is like a lot of people hide who they really are. Booster doesn't. Booster is who he is. A lot of people make a lot of mistakes and spend their life hiding him. Booster makes them out and open. And he's like, a lot of people are jokes. At least Booster is funny.
Wow.
Like,
damn, that's why you get paid to write. That's awesome. I really love that idea of that character.
So that's the Booster I love to write. And he's in the book. And yeah, there's no more, I wish, I mean, look, Dan Jurgens is writing Blue and Gold, and that's the person who should be writing it. But goddamn, if he ever stops and wants to let me write a Booster book, I would write it forever for free. I like writing. I write such sad, minor key stuff. To write funny and to write a guy who's constant, and I love writing with his little, he's got Skeets is always just kind of sighing and being like, oh, Skeets is like, I don't know. Did you ever watch Futurama?
Yes.
It's very much that the relationship between
Fry and Bender,
Captain,
or
no, the captain and his who's the captain, the Shaner, the captain of the starship. Oh my god! Zach
Brannigan.
Zach Brannigan and Skiff.
Yes.
Kiff. Zach Brannigan and Kiff.
That is an incredible comparison of characters.
Yes, it's very much the vibe of him and Skeets, of just like
everything clicks. That makes sense. So, Blue Beetle and Booster Gold's friendship is another thing that you've explored. And we got that dynamic in Blue Beetle's sanctuary page, where he's talking about like, no matter what, I have Booster. He's my friend. Like, he'll be there whenever I call, even if the call is going to be tough. Yeah. How do you approach writing a friendship like that? Like, do you think they're the kind to cover each other's backs no matter what, or is there some like they'll call each other on one another's shit?
I think there's both. I think you have a lot of friends in life throughout your whole life. And, 90% of them, you're kind of like, I want you to like me, probably 95% of them. When you call them, you're like, I have a great joke. I have a great story. I want you to like me. But then there's those 5% of friends. I have a few of who you're like, I want you to know me. Like, when I get into that situation where I have to put a nickel in a payphone and confess that I either did something, I just want you to pick up and talk to me and be like, this is who I am. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
And that's who Booster and Beetle are.
Damn. They see each other for who they really are.
They see each other for who they really are, and they love each other anyway, which is a line I use from Catwoman Batman.
Yeah.
But yeah, that it's that idea that like Booster could fuck up very, very hard, and Beetle will be there and be like, all right, man, let's get you in a program. Let's get you some, I believe not only in your your goodness, but I believe in your redemption.
Yeah.
And Beetle and the same for Booster.
What was
Beetle.
it? Bros Before Heroes, like that.
Yeah, Bros Before
I
Heroes.
thought that was a brilliant line because that's how I thought of their relationship. It's like they're friends before they are heroes. So very interesting to hear that. But do you think there's any comparisons to be made between their friendship and Fire and Ice's, or are they completely different dynamics?
No, I mean, no. It's. I think there is a comparison, except there's. But it's man, it's more interesting because there are aspects in each of them that kind of crisscross.
Mm-hmm.
Like Fire is probably the more competent, the more powerful superhero. Like you wouldn't want to say Fire. It wouldn't say Fire is Booster and Beetle is Ice, because Fire is confident because she's not doesn't need the support that. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a good comparison. So I think the relationship between Fire and Ice may go even a little deeper because it's a more vulnerable relationship. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's just because Beetle and Booster are kind of bros. But Fire and Ice are almost like, like Catherine Heathcliff from Wuthering Heights. Like they don't know where one's soul ends and where the other stops.
Interesting. So Another prominent member of the group is Martian Manhunter. With a character like Superman, who was raised on Earth to be human, John is kind of the opposite. John came later and learned what humans are in a way. Do you approach John with more like alien sensibilities in mind, or do you think he's more human because he has learned these later?
I approach John as a guy who constructed himself to be something he's not. Like I think he's like the most repressed superhero in the DC universe.
Sad.
My conception of John very much comes from Darwin Cook. I'm not gonna lie. Mm-hmm. It comes from New Frontier, which is just the best Martian Manhunter story of all time. And the idea that he's like, I am this stern, stolid guy who must solve crimes. Darwin did it best. He's just like, he sat there and he watched a bunch of police procedurals from 1952 and was like, that's me. I'm Jack Webb and Dragnet. I have no emotions. I'm just that guy. And I'm forgetting about the fact that I'm from this planet. I'm forgetting about everything about me. And I am just, I feel he's like, he's Don Draper in Mad Men. He's just like
running from the trauma.
I am beautiful and held together. And you have to crack at me to get to the much deeper layers of me.
I told you I would not ask any spoiler questions, but I do have to ask one about Martian. Will he eat any cookies in this book, or are we avoiding that? I
don't think there's cookies, but the Martian Manhunter scene will be unforgettable. It's one of those we did. Sometimes you do an issue, like the Watchmen issue that reflects itself. Our looking at Martian Manhunter is like it's like we threw away sort of our normal format and kind of did something special with it. So yeah, and it's there are some moments there that you're going to remember this Martian Manhunter forever.
Great, I'm very excited. So Gnort, is that Gnort? Nort,
yes, Nort.
Will he be? Or is he kind of being your placeholder for like a Kite Man type character, or do you have some sort of sinister plans for this poor Lantern?
No, Gnort's he has a big role to play. He's a big moment.
Great.
Gnort's a big puppy dog come to life, but he's gruff and drinks beer, and I think of him as like that friend you have who's like still living in a trailer next to the beach. And is just kind of trying to figure life out, and
That's awesome.
Drunk half the day, and very loyal and kind, and a little bit of Walter from The Big Lebowski. Like he's got some issues, but he's always by your side. And,
that's incredible. I'm so excited for him now.
So yeah, that's the Nort I have in this series. I have had fun writing all these characters. They were all.
I'm so pumped for this book. Now, looking at the images released of it, a telling absence seemed to be that of Maxwell Lord, one of the major characters from DeMatteis and Giffen's JLI. Was this a deliberate omission, or will he be popping up somewhere throughout the series?
I mean, it's a tough for a spoiler thing, but in the first issue, there's a page that shows sort of all the who are the characters in this book we're going to explore, and those are obviously your suspects basically for the murder mystery. The people on that page, one of them did it. Like, it's not like Max Lord did it and he's not on that page. One of those people did it.
So people will find out when they buy the first issue.
Yeah.
Now, we do like to close with a pretty big one as well. And if you had a Rube Goldberg machine, what would it do?
I probably would pet my dog, because my dog is one of my favorite things in my entire life. And she spends the day sitting next to me. And, sometimes I'm typing. And she's like, it's time to get me some pets. And I'm like, no, I'm in the middle of this sentence. And I very much wish there was a button I could press that dropped a bowling ball that did this and ended up just with like a broom going over her back just so I could finish some typing.
She is a highlight of the internet for most people because anytime she's on your Twitter is a great day to be.
Oh, she's just adorable dog. She's terribly behaved. You should know that, but she's wonderful to me.
Mine is too. I don't know where Dinah is, but I think she's in the other room. So this book comes out on November 2nd.
That's so soon.
Yeah.
That's in like 5 days.
Yes. It's going to be a big release. Do you have any other projects that you wanted to, for people to pick up? Like things that are coming out right now?
Yeah. I did a calculation with my son. We went through I'm working on 12 different books right now. If you count Rorschach and Strange Adventures, which just ended, but I'm still kind of talking about them and the trades. But I was very productive during COVID. Like what I did to keep sane was to write. So I got
We're going to benefit from that. Yeah.
In that sense. Well, yeah, I hope you bet. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, Backcat is still coming out. Issue, I believe 9 is next with Liam Sharp. It's Liam's last issue on it before Clay comes back. Supergirl 4 is out very soon. I think the week after this one. No, Supergirl 5. Sorry, Supergirl 5 is out. That's a great issue, which my daughter came up with the basic plot. Not the basic plot, but she had she asked me one day. She's like, "Daddy, so a yellow sun gives Superman strength, and a red sun takes it away. What does a green sun do?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm stealing that idea.
It's mine now."
Yeah, it's like, thank you. Guess you can get to go to college now. So yeah, it's a brilliant. I really like this issue, and Bilquist drew the hell out of it. Which is it's just like it's one of those sort of why Supergirl is awesome kind of issues, and she's fighting dinosaurs, which is always awesome. Human Target's coming out, and then my creator owned is about to be announced. So please watch this space. This is my first creator own I've ever done. This is brand new sort of territory for me, doing all this stuff, having Hollywood meetings and not doing and working on and creating brand new characters in a brand new world. And it's something different and bizarre. And we just announced it's with Elsa Chartier. We announced that yesterday. And so, the art is going to be beautiful and the storytelling is going to be pristine. So, so that those are the big things. Mostly if you have to forget all that stuff, just remember the creator owned is coming and look for that because we spent a year building this thing, so we really wanted to get out to people.
Wow. Yeah, I'll be screaming about that from the top of the hills. I'm so excited to see what you can do without any, not constraints, but like not having to fit into established characters.
When you see what it is, you're going to be like, oh, that's weird. No one's ever done that before, and it's completely different than everything else. And yet, it's exactly what I thought Tom would do.
Good. That's going
to be your response. You'd be like, "Oh yeah, dumb."
That makes sense.
It's going to be a dumb moment. You'll roll your eyes, and be like, "Of course you would do that, Tom." Yes, I get it.
You can find us at Gatecrashers Pod. You can also find our website at gatecrashers.fan. Tom, where can people find you online?
On Twitter, I'm Tom King TK, so my name and my initials, and I'm on Instagram, Tom King _TK, because someone took that. So, yeah.
Hey, thanks for coming. You'll catch us next time.
What a pleasure. Thank you for having me. This was such a joy. It was such a joy talking about all this stuff with you. You rock.
Just a